You're all staring at me like I'm a disease, Elias said dryly. Don't worry. It's mutual. The air inside the Virzon royal chamber crackled with static tension. Massive arches of bone steel curved overhead, etched in glowing alien glyphs that pulsed with the Empire's bloodline. And beneath them, four alien princesses towered like living gods, flawless, fierce, furious. At the center, Elias Rain, a very tired and very unamused human, stood beneath the burning sigil of the king's final decree. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't royalty. He was a mechanic from Earth. And yet the glowing scroll above read in a dozen dialects. By law of the Fourth Celestial Accord, the royal inheritance, including the 4 daughters of the crown, shall bond to Elias Rain of Earth. Zara, the eldest, snarled. 9 feet tall, her body armored in iridescent scales, she had a scar across her cheek that pulsed red when she was angry, which meant it was currently glowing like lava. This is an insult, she growled. A human? A man who smells of engine grease and broken gravity wells? Our father was mad. Elias shrugged. Probably. Not my fault I'm what's left in his will. The second princess, Nixery, tilted her head. Her skin was smooth like polished obsidian, eyes silver with data spirals flickering inside. He must have embedded logic into the contract. Why you, of all species? Elias glanced between them and stepped forward. Honestly? I'd ask the same damn thing. Then there was Linessa, the third. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her gaze slithered over him like silk dipped in venom, curious, predatory, and faintly amused. Her body shimmered with pheromone halos, a trick of her race. She was already testing him. Last, hidden partly behind her sisters, was Velaya, the youngest. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. He used to whisper Earth's name before he slept. Elias turned. She was the only one who didn't look ready to kill him. Her hands were clasped tight behind her back. Her long, opalescent hair shifted like wind through water. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something flickered. Not desire. Recognition. The grand chamber emptied after the decree was read. Elias didn't move. He stared up at the marble effigy of the deceased king, carved with one hand resting over a planet, Earth. What the hell were you thinking, old man? Behind him, Boots echoed. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. You should leave. Zara's voice was like a war drum. Go back to your dirtball. This galaxy will eat you alive. I've lived in a place where breathing is a luxury and rent steals your dreams. Don't worry, I'm already half-eaten. She paused. That wasn't the answer she expected. She circled him instead, observing him like a weapon she didn't trust. Do you even understand what the bond is? She asked. No. But I'm sure it involves rules. Rituals. Possibly teeth. Zara almost smiled. Almost. It's not a marriage, she said. It's dominion. You hold our lives. Our access to the throne, our legacy, even our mating rights. You don't just inherit us. You own us. Elias turned to her now, eyes dark, tired. No. I didn't ask for this. I don't want to own anyone. She stepped in close. Then why haven't you refused? He inhaled sharply. Because I'm tired of running. Tired of being nothing. Maybe for once. I want to matter. For a heartbeat, the warrior princess didn't speak. Then she leaned in, dangerously close. Her breath smelled like hot iron and violet smoke. If you want to matter, she whispered, you'll have to survive the next 3 nights. And she walked away. Later, Elias found his assigned chamber, a hybrid of ancient stone and floating crystal interfaces. It pulsed gently to his biosignature. He slumped onto the bed, staring up at the ceiling that shimmered with stars. Velaya said the king whispered Earth. He muttered. There was a chime. Soft. Cautious. He stood, and the door slid open. It was her. Velaya. Still in her ceremonial robes, eyes glowing softly in the dark. I didn't come to hurt you, she said. I didn't assume you would. You don't look like you've ever heard anything in your life. She stepped inside. The air changed, softer. Warmer. I felt you, she whispered. When you arrived. Like a thread tugging in my chest. Is that normal in your culture? No. She walked closer. It's never happened before. They were inches apart now. Elias could smell her, like rain on alien soil and moonlight on skin. Her fingers brushed his arm. Cool. Delicate. I dreamed of Earth when I was a child, she said. Of oceans I'd never seen. Of pain I didn't understand. It always ended with a voice calling my name. And now that voice is yours. A pulse of heat stirred the room. Elias stepped back. Velaya. I don't know what your people believe, but I'm not here to claim us? She offered. He sighed. To pretend this is real. I'm human. I fix broken machines. I'm not a king. She smiled, a sadness behind it. Maybe that's why he chose you. Then she kissed him. Not fiercely. Not lustfully. Softly. Carefully. And in that kiss was something Elias hadn't felt in years. Not hunger. Not desperation. Hope. He broke it with a gasp. Why me? Velaya touched her forehead to his. Because my father saw what none of us did. That the galaxy doesn't need another god. It needs someone who still remembers how to feel. Elias woke to the sound of metal sliding against metal. It wasn't loud. It was precise. Deliberate. His eyes flicked open, instinct faster than thought. The lights in the royal suite dimmed to blood red, casting shadows like liquid ink. In that light, a silhouette stood at the end of the bed. Feminine. Tall. Dangerous. Do all your princesses make late-night visits? Elias said, voice flat. Or just the ones planning to kill me? The shadow stepped forward. It was Nixery. Her obsidian skin shimmered like stars caught in stone, dressed in a silk wrap so sheer it clung to every calculated curve. Her expression was unreadable, mathematically neutral, like someone solving an equation with a heartbeat. Relax, human, she said. If I wanted you dead, you'd never have woken up. Comforting. She stopped by the bed. No weapons. No pretense. Just the eerie calm of a woman who'd calculated 10 ways to manipulate you before you even blinked. I came to make a proposition. Midnight's a bold time for business meetings. Nixery tilted her head. It's when minds are weakest. Guards sleep. Hearts reveal. Let me guess. You want to test how much control I have. If I'll break protocol. If I'll sleep with one of you before the crown's settled. Close, she said, and sat, uninvited, on the edge of his bed. I want to see if you're playing us, or if we should start playing you. Elias sat up, bare chest lit by the dim glow of glyphs lining the wall. You're scared, he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Of you? No. Of what this means. Of losing control. You're the strategist. The one who never lets emotion cloud a plan. This royal bonding thing? It wasn't your endgame. She didn't speak. That was confirmation enough. Elias leaned forward, elbows on knees. You all mock Earth. Say humans are weak. But the second I inherited this throne, you started circling me like wolves with a broken compass. You are weak, she said softly. Emotionally volatile. Instinct-driven. Easily manipulated by attraction. And yet, Elias murmured, here you are. Dressed like a fantasy, sitting in my room at night. Trying to figure me out, before one of your sisters does. She flinched, only slightly. But enough. Nixery stood. I'll make this simple. There's a ceremony in 3 days. One of us must initiate the first link of the bond. If none of us act, the empire collapses. Elias arched a brow. So you're here to offer yourself? No. I'm here to offer control. He froze. I'll help you, she said, walking slowly toward the window, the stars catching the edge of her silhouette. We fake the first bond. Publicly. Buy time. Meanwhile, I restructure the council. We rewrite the decree to limit your power. Elias rose. So, we pretend I'm king, while you actually run things. She looked back. Exactly. And what do you get? Nixery's voice dropped an octave. I get to keep my empire intact, without giving my heart to a man who doesn't even believe in destiny. He crossed the room in 2 steps. I'm not a puppet, he growled. She didn't flinch this time. Then prove it. Silence stretched between them like a blade. You're not like your sisters, Elias finally said. Zara burns. Linessa tempts. Velaya hopes. But you? You calculate. You cut feelings off before they become liabilities. They are liabilities, she said coldly. Especially love. Then why are your hands shaking? Her eyes widened. She looked down, and realized her fingers had curled into fists, trembling. The room shifted. Tension swelled. The air between them became something alive, thick with truths unsaid, emotions masked behind logic. Nixery stepped closer. Barely a breath between them now. Why did he choose you? She whispered. My father. He could have picked 1,000 suitors. Why Earth? Why you? Elias didn't move. Maybe because I wasn't raised to treat love like a strategy. Her breath hitched. And then, suddenly, she kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was desperate. Angry. Her lips tasted of cold fire and hidden longing, and Elias let her explore him like she was trying to find the weakness she'd never admit she needed. He kissed her back. For a moment. Then he pulled away, gently but firm. This isn't a deal, he said. And it's not a game. Nixery's eyes were glassy. Wet. No, she whispered. It's a mistake. And she vanished, too fast, too silent, leaving only the scent of electric jasmine and the sound of his own heart pounding. The next morning, chaos erupted. The security doors of the throne hall exploded inward, molten edges and plasma scorched. Guards fell. Sentries scrambled. Elias ran down the corridor, following the alarms. A voice screamed his name. Velaya. He turned the corner, and saw her. Pinned by a cloaked assassin, its weapon drawn, a blade of phase light humming like a predator's purr. Get off her! Elias didn't think. He moved. He grabbed a fallen guard's staff, ignited it, and dove. The blow wasn't elegant. But it was enough. The assassin stumbled, just long enough for Velaya to pulse a defensive shield, knocking it back. It vanished in a shimmer of shadow, teleport tech. But the message had been sent. Who was that? Velaya gasped. Elias helped her up. Professional. Fast. Someone who knew the palace's blind spots. Nixery stormed in moments later. Face pale. Voice tight. It wasn't one of us. I swear. But Elias was already looking at her. And for the first time, she couldn't meet his eyes. Later, in the war room, the truth came out. Zara slammed a fist on the table. One of the council factions wants you dead, Elias. They're testing us. Seeing if we'll fracture. Nixery stayed silent. Linessa licked her lips, half amused, half afraid. Elias stared at the map. 4 blinking icons. Each representing a princess. And in the center, him. The unwilling king of a dying empire. A man surrounded by women who might love him, or kill him. Ending line. And somewhere, deep in the palace shadows, another pair of eyes watched him. Smiling. Elias stood alone in the echo vault, watching memories bleed from the walls. Ghostly projections of the dead king flickered in the crystalline surfaces, moments from a ruler's life playing on loop. Crowning victories. Wars. A strange lullaby hummed in an alien tongue. But one memory played more than the others. A private one. The king, whispering Earth's name. Reaching toward a flickering hologram of a human child. My mistake was thinking blood made legacy. But legacy is forged by the broken, who choose to rise. Elias swallowed. The hologram dissolved. He wasn't supposed to hear that. He wasn't supposed to matter this much. The door behind him hissed open. Zara. Armor off. Training garb clinging to her sculpted frame. Her breathing was heavy, like she'd come from the combat pits. Or a fight. I've been looking for you, she said. Elias didn't turn. Guess I'm easy to find when I'm sulking like a tragic prince. She walked up beside him. Their reflections hovered in the crystal, warrior and wanderer, side by side. Zara folded her arms. Nixery told us you kissed her. Elias exhaled slowly. No. She kissed me. I stopped it. Why? He looked at her. Because I didn't trust the reason behind it. And do you trust mine? He hesitated. Zara's eyes were fire and regret. I pushed you, she said. Tried to scare you off. Because I've seen men like you, who want the thrill of conquering a warrior, but shrink when the scars start showing. She raised a hand and touched the scar on her own cheek. This? It's not ceremonial. A human gave it to me. A mercenary I loved. He betrayed us. Gave away a battle plan for money and an escape pod. I'm not him. No. You stood between a blade and Velaya. You didn't even hesitate. Elias met her gaze. And yet, she whispered, you still haven't chosen any of us. Silence. Tension bloomed again. Not hostile. Not even sexual. Something deeper. Unspoken fears. Needs. I don't want to choose the wrong one, Elias said quietly. Not because of law. Not because of pressure. Because I've made promises before. And I broke someone who didn't deserve it. Zara's voice softened, rare, raw. What happened? She died waiting for me. Earth sighed. While I was running from commitment. From everything. She said she'd wait until I was ready. He blinked away the memory. She waited until cancer decided I never would be. Zara stepped close. Her hand touched his. Then don't pick based on guilt, she murmured. Pick, when your soul demands it. He looked down at their joined hands. Her skin was warm. Rough. Real. And in that moment, for the first time, she didn't look like a warlord. She looked like a woman who'd buried every piece of softness under 10 layers of survival. And she just let him see one. Later that night, Velaya came to him. This time, she wasn't trembling. She was glowing. Lit from within by something ancient and beautiful. I saw the future, she whispered. He looked up. One of your visions again? She nodded. This one was real. It hurt. She sat across from him in the private star garden, surrounded by hovering blooms that pulsed with bioluminescence. I saw the bond. All 4 of us linked. You at the center. And? I saw us burning, she whispered. Not from war. From each other. From jealousy. From a love that had no direction. Elias frowned. You think bonding with all of you would destroy everything? No, she said. I think not bonding will destroy you. Suddenly, the alarm flared again. This time, from inside the palace. Nixery's lab. Elias and Velaya ran through the corridors, her dress fluttering like wings behind her. When they reached the lab, the door was already wide open. Nixery stood inside, frozen. A glass chamber behind her glowed with unauthorized energy. Inside? A genetic clone. Of Elias. Half-grown. Sleeping. Nixery's voice cracked. I wasn't going to activate it. I needed a backup. If you died. If war broke out. I thought. You cloned me? I didn't mean for it to go this far. Zara and Linessa arrived moments later. Linessa's laughter was ice. Oh, sister. You were trying to replace him. Zara's fist tightened. Velaya stepped back. Hurt washing over her like cold water. Elias looked at all of them. And finally, spoke with fury. You want to know why your father picked me? Because I wasn't trying to be anyone's god. Because I wanted to choose love, not manufacture it. He turned to Nixery. Deactivate it. Now. Or I'll leave, and take the Empire's last hope with me. Nixery moved, slowly, her hand hovering above the control glyphs. For a long, aching moment, no one breathed. Then, she shut it down. The clone dissolved in a burst of light. And she collapsed to her knees, silent tears streaming. I'm sorry, she whispered. Elias didn't speak. He just turned and walked out. Zara followed. So did Velaya. But Lanessa stayed behind. Watching Nixery cry. Watching the empty tank. And smiling faintly. Later that night, in the hall of the first bond, the ceremonial chamber lit with starlight and fire, Elias stood before the empty pedestal. Zara stood to his right. Velaya to his left. The moment had come. One touch of his palm to the crown sigil, and the first phase of the bond would initiate. Once chosen, it couldn't be undone. Zara whispered, Do it. Velaya whispered, Wait. He turned to them both. And then, he stepped back. No, Elias said. Not like this. Cliffhanger ending line. I'm not choosing one of you. I'm choosing all of you. And if the galaxy can't handle that, then it's time it learned what a human heart can do. The galaxy held its breath. In the hall of the first bond, time itself seemed to slow as Elias Rain stepped away from the bond pedestal, refusing the final rite meant to crown him king and bond him to one of the 4 royal daughters. Instead, he turned and faced all 4. Zara's breath caught. Velaya's eyes shimmered. Lanessa tilted her head, curious. And Nixery stood frozen, as if bracing for a sentence she hadn't computed. I'm not choosing one of you, Elias said, voice calm, but unshakably firm. I'm choosing all of you. And then, louder, echoing through the chamber. If this empire was built on love forged through force, then it's no empire worth saving. The crown flared to life. Its sigil pulsed like a heartbeat, sensing something unwritten. The ancient mechanism was designed for one bondmate. One link. One throne. It had no precedent for this. The walls trembled. Velaya gasped, stepping forward. Elias, the bond wasn't designed for multiple links. I know, he replied, eyes burning with clarity. But maybe that's the point. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open. Blasters fired. Screams erupted. The warlord's faction had arrived. Dozens of mercenaries, all armored in blood steel, poured into the hall. The betrayal was no longer subtle, it was a coup. A power grab, now that Elias had defied protocol. Zara moved instantly, leaping into battle, her blade igniting with a roar of plasma. Velaya erected a shimmering energy dome, shielding civilians. Nixery activated defense glyphs, while Lanessa simply smiled. She walked into the chaos, body glowing with bioluminescence, weaving between blades like a dream. Her touch sent enemies collapsing, conscious but unable to feel. Elias stood in the center, unmoving, eyes closed. He didn't fight. He felt. 4 hearts. 4 souls. And somewhere deep within him, something unlocked. The bond wasn't about domination. It was about synchronization. And in that moment, he connected with them, all of them. A pulse tore through the chamber. Not sound. Not energy. Something deeper. A psychic tether formed between Elias and the princesses, each link glowing a different hue. Zara, red gold, wild and loyal. Velaya, soft blue, intuitive and pure. Nixery, silver, analytical and sharp. Lanessa, violet, dangerous and playful. They all turned to him. They felt him. Their breaths synced. Their movements aligned. It was impossible. Unheard of. And yet, it was happening. Zara growled through her calms. We're linked. What the hell did you do? Trust me, Elias said. Just feel. Together they fought. Zara's strength flowed into Elias. He dodged a blade like he'd trained in her arena for years. Velia's shield extended to protect his flank instinctively, no words needed. Nixery's mind synced his reactions milliseconds ahead of danger. And Linessa's chaos kept the enemy guessing, drawing them in, dancing just out of reach, intoxicating with every motion. It wasn't just a fight. It was a performance. A four-heart rhythm with one center. Human. Uncrowned. But utterly undeniable. By the time the warlord's forces were pushed back, the chamber was scorched, shattered, but standing. The princesses gathered around Elias, breathing hard. Their bodies bruised, glowing faintly from overextended power. They didn't speak. They just stood and looked at him. As if for the first time, they truly saw him. "I should be dead," Elias whispered. "And yet," Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, "you made us something more." Linessa leaned in close. "You felt like all four of us. At once." Velia held his hand. "You gave us what the bond never did, choice." And Nixery stepped forward last, her voice quiet. "You broke the algorithm." The crown activated on its own, hovering above them. Not asking. Just acknowledging. Four radiant lines arced from each princess to Elias, meeting in the center of his chest. The room exploded in light. And when it faded, there was no throne. No crown. Just Elias, standing among the four women who once resented him, feared him, studied him, tested him. And now, loved him. Days later, the news rippled across galaxies. The first ever fourfold bond in Virzon history. A human had rewritten the rules of power, not through force, but feeling. Not through conquest, but connection. He never claimed the title of king. Instead, Elias was named something older, more sacred. The anchor of the Blood Star line. Not a ruler. A foundation. And the four princesses, now co-rulers, rewrote the Empire's future together. One final scene. Elias stood on the balcony of the Sky Palace, wind curling through his hair. The stars stretched endlessly, but for once, he didn't feel lost. Velia curled beside him, head on his shoulder. "You never answered the question." He smiled. "Which one? Why you stayed? Why you didn't run?" Zara stepped up behind them, arms crossed. "Because he's stubborn." Nixery appeared next, holding datapads. "Or emotionally unstable." Linessa slipped beside them, smirking. "Or maybe, he finally realized what we all were to him." Elias looked at them, one by one. "Because I found something here I didn't know I needed," he said. "A place. A purpose. And four people, who make me feel like I'm not broken." Velia smiled softly. "And if the universe tries to take you from us?" Elias's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Then let it try. It'll learn what a human bonded to four alien queens can do." Final lines, narration ready. In a galaxy ruled by cold law and cruel tradition, one flawed human changed everything. Not by being a king, but by being worth loving.